ask these teachers, if you're teaching a child something that you know their parents would not approve of, would you teach it anyway? And in this one particular school, 85% of the teachers said yes, they would. So this is I mean, these folks are deeply indoctrinated in this stuff. It goes all the way back to their schools
And
when they were
they're
getting
taking
their
parents' rights away when they do that stuff like that, George. And that
absolutely,
pisses me off too, because
absolutely. And
I've
you
had
should
some
be
issues
pissed
with
off.
that in the last couple of years.
Let's
So,
do it.
George, what is critical race theory?
Well, critical race theory is a Marxist ideology designed to take down Western civilization. Karl Marx used class for a long time to try to do that, to take down Western civilization, but also the nuclear family. And so class still works. You still have countries like Venezuela who hand over their freedoms to Marxist dictators and regret it almost immediately. Of course, they had one of the most successful economies in the Americas, of course, after America and Canada. And 2 years later, they're eating out of trash cans and killing their dogs to survive. So, but it is like all Marxist ideologies, it has an oppressor versus oppressed theme to it. You know, everything in your life would be great if it only weren't for those people over there. You know, and they're dividing people by race with this, and it has snuck into more areas than I can even count. DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, is another part of critical race theory, and but uh, to give you sort of a definition, there is ethnic studies and there is critical race theory. Ethnic studies is the positive, healthy exploration of one's culture, leading to self confidence, self awareness, all the things that people need to be successful in life. And this is especially valuable for children of color in difficult situations. St. Louis, Chicago, in these worst neighborhoods, they see this. Oh, I'm a part of this education. This inspires me to become something more. And without this inspiration, they may find themselves getting involved with things they shouldn't be involved with. So anyway, ethnic studies is the positive learning of oneself. And then you have critical race theory, which interjects a racist element, a negative racist element into these lessons where it seeks to divide children. In particular, it attacks mostly white students, but there is a thing called whiteness that can be applied between two African Americans. And so, but it focuses on only our worst moments in history without giving due credit to all of the advances that we've made. And we have come so far as a nation, as far as race relations, since the 50s and the 60s and Jim Crow and all of those things. They're all gone now. And so to give you an example, one parent sent in a lesson to libs of TikTok. And this particular critical race theory lesson was a lesson about freedom. And in this lesson about freedom, kindergartners, 5 and 6 year olds, were asked to explore the following sentences: whites have more than blacks, whites harass blacks, whites oppress people of color, threatening body language, and you must fight in a war. And so that is the critical race theory element of those lessons. Now, a CRT person will tell you, well, the goal of that lesson was positive. No, I don't see how you could get anything positive out of those lessons. And again, you put a group of adults into a room to discuss those sentences, you're going to get shouting, maybe even fighting. Most adults don't have the emotional maturity to have that conversation. Now imagine 5 and 6 year olds. And imagine the little white kid in there who now feels that he has somehow guilt for all of our society's past sins. Your family's bad. You're bad. You're racist just by being white. And those are the lessons that they learn. And they're disgusting and they're horrible.
I can't agree with you more on that. It is disgusting and horrible when I think about those lessons being taught. So I have a 5-year-old son myself. And when I think of him being taught those themes in school, now I personally have not seen that where we live, but we live in Northwest Missouri. So when I think of my son going to school and learning those type of themes in a school setting, it not only hurts my feelings, but it pisses me off. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you why. Because not number one, not only is he too young to understand those themes particularly,
Right.
but that's not what school's for.
Nope.
In my personal opinion, we have gotten to a point in society where educators do believe that their job is to educate. And the American public school system was never designed for that. The American public school system was designed to, for a lack of a better word, manufacture workers, to fill factories, to build airplanes, to manufacture stuff. And we somehow got away from that ideology even when I was in school in the 90s and 2000s, where we were going to school to learn, and I didn't learn anything. I really did not learn much of anything important. But what I did learn the most, where I think I did learn the most, is history class. And it's very, very underrated in school systems that today. Like, they don't teach history the way they used to. And not only do they not teach history the way they used to, I noticed that they just gloss over the important, how the wars, how these conflicts got started, um, and what the ultimate goal was, and stuff like that. They skip over all the little nuances
Hmm.
of what goes into history and just basically lay it out like bad guy, good guy, us versus them. And I don't like that.
Yeah.
But I did notice a shift right around 2015. Like I said, we're in Northwest Missouri. Um, and I did notice a shift in our public schools. I had kids in the school system at that time. I have kids in the school system now, where it suddenly shifted from a education based, just, reading, writing, arithmetic, to identity politics in schools. And I've never seen anything like that before. And it was right after you had mentioned Ferguson, St. Louis. It was right after those riots in
Yeah.
St. Louis. I noticed a very big switch here in Missouri, to where it wasn't all about just education, but identity politics had worked its way into our schools. And you'd wrote a book called Critical Race Theory in your school, How to Fight Back. Is that correct?
Correct.
So how do we fight back? Because it is in where we go to where we have schools here, we don't get a choice of what's in the curriculum. We
Right.
do go to school board meetings. We try to make our voices heard, and it doesn't make a difference. It's almost like, in order to get these federal dollars, they have to have certain things in the curriculum. Is there any truth to that?
Well, I don't know if there is truth to that, but it wouldn't surprise me. Most of the curriculum designers that I looked into certainly insert a lot of critical race theory and DEI into their lessons. But I do know one thing. President Trump has promised that once he becomes president again, he will begin restricting funds to schools who are knowingly including CRT in their lesson plans. And that is the kind of thing that we need to fight back. But that's a start. But, just because they restrict the money doesn't necessarily mean anything. Let me get to this before I kind of explain more on the other stuff. But uh, the Air Force, and believe it or not, I'm a retired Air Force Master Sergeant, my beloved Air Force, and something called DODEA, the Department of Defense Education Activity. They both did this, which is they were told to not push DEI and CRT in the Department of Defense schools. And the Department of Defense runs a school system on military bases, mostly overseas, so that when a family goes to live in Germany, the children don't have to go to a German school. They go to a school just like we have here, but it just happens to be located in Germany. And so anyway, they were told to not push CRT. They agreed to do it as they testified before Congress, be under oath. Yep, we're going to do it, Your Honor, I swear. And what they did, both of those organizations, all they did was shuffle around the money, shuffle around the people, and they changed nothing. So they changed, instead of calling it CRT or social justice, they changed the name to, oh, geez, what was it? Social equity, some social equity or something along those lines. I can't believe it slips in my mind at the moment, but they changed nothing. And the reason the Defense Department did this was because a study out of Arizona State University showed that the military is less lethal today because of all of the money they're spending on social justice programs, identity programs, the things that you're talking about. And that's why you have companies like Harley Davidson. I mean, every time you apply this stuff, operational effectiveness goes down, because as far as the military is concerned, instead of using that money to train people to be effective in wartime, to buy more weapons, to buy more this, more that, to make them more deadly when they need to be, that is all getting diverted into these social justice lessons. And they're spending a lot of time on it instead of, out at the range becoming a better marksman. They're learning that they're racist because they're white sitting in a classroom. So, so anyway, it's there, and don't expect them to just give up and go away. Now, what can you do? If you, first of all, as a parent, the first thing you should do is go out to your children's online course descriptions. You're not going to see the words critical race theory because schools are hip to the fact that parents know those words. And, like in the 2015, 2010, it was there, and they used those words, but parents didn't really know what it was. And a lot of parents still don't know what it is, and that's the way they like it. So go out to your course descriptions online. And if you see words like oppression, systemic racism, marginalization, white oppression, and even, and it's even in classes like algebra, that they teach these things. So if you see those things, chances are your child is being exposed to critical race theory. If you do find that, the next thing you need to do is get in touch with other parents. Tell them what's going on, make sure they know what's going on, and then begin going to the school, talk to teachers individually, administrators, go to school board meetings, and begin telling them you don't want your child exposed to this. And you have a right to not have your child exposed to this. Chances are, if the people that you're dealing with are dedicated social justice warriors, dedicated Marxists, they're going to try to tell you, no, nothing we can do about it. It's written down. Okay, show me where it's written down. Chances are it's not written down anywhere, but they're going to lie to you about it. Don't be surprised. So you're going to have to start paying attention to their homework, Start paying attention to the things that the teachers are saying to them. Tell your children if your teacher is saying things that makes them uncomfortable, they need to come and tell you immediately. And in my book, I discussed this one school, and it's just one school. But they asked these teachers, if you're teaching a child something that you know their parents would not approve of, would you teach it anyway? And in this one particular school, 85% of the teachers said yes, they would. So this is I mean, these folks are deeply indoctrinated in this stuff. It goes all the way back to their schools
And
when they were
they're
getting
taking
their
parents' rights away when they do that stuff like that, George. And that
absolutely,
pisses me off too, because
absolutely, and
I've
you
had
should
some
be
issues
pissed
with
off.
that in the last couple of years.
That's exact. I tell me about it. I'm interested. I want to tell me your story. How did that happen to you?
So just over the summer, we went to take our 5-year-old to summer school, and it was he was in preschool. My 5-year-old is autistic, and so he had special education classes for preschool, and transitioning to kindergarten. They had suggested to us to take our son and take him to summer school so he could get acclimated to his new school, meet his new teachers. But here's the thing, George, they wanted me to just drop him off.
Mm,
My son is 5 and he's
yeah,
autistic, and they wanted that they won't allow parents inside the doors, and they call it for security
really?
reasons. Yeah, they will not let them inside the doors. And this
Wow.
is a public school, George. They
Hmm.
won't let parents inside the doors of the school, only on
How do they
special
get away with
occasions.
that? How do they get away with that? Anyway,
Well,
I'm
so
sorry.
I
Please
think
continue.
um so the in this the day I told the principal of the school was standing at the doors greeting the kids as they walk in, and I told her, I was like, hey, I need to walk my son to class and meet his teacher so that we have that, visual rapport. She can see me, I can see her, we can meet, and that way she knows every day I will be the one doing the handoff,
Hmm.
and nobody else is to, just me and mom. Nobody else is to be, picking up the kid. And that's for safety reasons. And I
Sure.
knew that they ran a skeleton crew during the summer. It wasn't a full staff. So who's, in all of these rooms in the school making sure that my son gets to where he needs to go? And in his IEP, which is an individualized education plan, uh, in his IEP, it says that he is to have someone to walk him to class every day, from the door to class every day, because they won't allow parents in the school.
Mm,
And when I learned that they weren't going to be following his IEP, I said, Noel, I don't like this. I don't just like dropping him off. He doesn't know you. You don't know him. If he was to walk away from class, like, you wouldn't know he was gone. And so it was a safety concern. And the principal was just immediately dismissive of all my concerns. She didn't want to talk to me. She was listening to respond and not to actively listen to my concerns. And she kept cutting me
hmm.
off, dismissing my concerns. Oh, it'll be okay. It's fine. I'm sure he'll be fine. And for a parent like me, the last damn thing you want to hear is, I'm sure it'll be fine. Well, what if it's not? What if it's not
Yeah.
fine? Are you going to take personal responsibility for it not being fine?
Yeah.
And
They
so
won't.
at that point, I was hollering. I used a few choice words. I cussed in front of children. It was very embarrassing. Um, and later, like after I had left, they had asked me to leave the school, and I was like, okay, give me my kid, bring me my kid, and I will leave. As soon as they brought him out, I left. About 5 minutes go by, I get a phone call from a police officer telling me, if I show up back up at the school, I will be arrested. I said, okay, that's fine. I don't need to go to school until school starts. And then he told me I was banned from all the school properties. And I was like, well, hold on a minute. You cannot personally do that, because I have children in the school. They have to serve me with trespass papers, all that stuff. You can't just tell me I can't go to the school.
Right.
And so the conversation went a little bit further, and I was like, look, you can't tell me what to do, sir. And he's like, I will charge you with disorderly conduct. And I said, you do that and I'll see your ass in court because I didn't do anything wrong. I have freedom of speech. That's my
Hmm.
First Amendment right. I can say whatever I want to, and you can't do a damn thing to me. So he didn't like that. And we got off the phone. That was over with. And then I got a letter in the mail saying I'd been banned from all our district's buildings. I have not one but two kids in the district, and I don't allow them to ride the bus. I pick them up, or I take them and pick them up every day. So I have to be at those buildings. And there's compulsory laws. The kids have to go to school. I'm their main
Right.
caregiver, so I have to go. Them telling me I'm not allowed to be on the public school properties because of a disagreement. I left when they asked me to. I did get loud. I did say a few cuss words, but those are my First Amendment rights to do so.
Sure.
It was embarrassing. I shouldn't have done it, but I shouldn't be banned from public schools because they disagree. I felt like my kid was in danger. I wasn't going to leave him there.
Right. And
And
any parent will understand. I mean, any parent will understand, and you're not the only one. This happened to parents across the country. Um, the administrators were talking to them, were gaslighting them, talking down to them. Oh, I'm educated, and you're just a parent. What do you know? And so they were when this critical race theory stuff first started coming out, parents were going to school board meetings, getting that treatment, and then they were getting angry and they were raising their voices just like you did. Now, um, what happened next was the various teachers' unions sent a letter to the Biden administration asking for them to use the powers of the Patriot Act, among other things, to control parents who may step over the bounds. Now, if you know anything about the Patriot Act, you know it was designed to do one thing. It was designed to investigate and prosecute domestic terrorists. And when people were saying, hey, wait a minute, you're comparing parents to domestic terrorists. Oh, no, we didn't. We didn't do that. Well, you asked the administration to use the Patriot Act to investigate these people. And what happened now, you got to understand that these people, these Marxists in many cases, and that's what they are, man. They are dedicated leftists, and they are outstanding at playing the victim. That teacher stood there, that principal stood there and talked to you, talked down to you, made you feel stupid. We'll handle this. Don't you worry about a thing. And when you got rightly frustrated, now you're right. You shouldn't have started cursing at them. And that gave them the opportunity to call the police on you. You opened the door. And that's actually one of the tips that I include in my book. If you go to a school board meeting to complain about critical race theory, if you have 2 minutes or 3 minutes, find out, write yourself a speech, put it on a piece of paper, put it on your cell phone, whatever it is, practice in front of others. But when you're reading it in front of the school board, just focus on the words. Don't even bother looking at them. And and if you stay focused on the words, you're going to control your emotions. You might be shaking, your voice might be, a little bit. So what? Just keep going and just focus on that, because if you lose your temper, they're going to come after you. And the FBI has investigated parents for making trouble at school board meetings. And who does the FBI? Who investigates terrorists? Is it the local police? No, it's the FBI. So why is the FBI going into these communities to look into these trouble causing parents? And now you're a trouble causing parent.
yeah.
So you're one of those folks, and you got to be careful. You really have to be careful. And you
So
understand what you did wrong. Yeah, I don't
yeah,
need to explain. So,
the So the whole thing about, we can always take our children out of the public school system. We can do that. That's an
Yes.
option. But here's the
Yes.
thing, George. The generations that are coming up into the public school system, these people are running shit. They are running Fortune 500 companies. They are running other schools, hospitals.
Yeah.
They are police. They are firefighters. They are, every walk of life. That's who these kids are going to grow up to be. And so, in my opinion, it's not as just as simple as taking the kid out of the public school system, because the public school system still exists. But I wonder, it's also interesting. I wonder if the Trump administration had already said something about dissolving the federal Department of Education. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we had one of the best school systems in the world, and then Jimmy Carter created the Department of Education, and our education, the quality of education in this country began deteriorating ever since. And now, despite the fact that we still spend more on each individual student than any other country, we're like one or two, I think, maybe three. But I mean, we spend a lot of money on education, and we're still not teaching. Our kids are still not learning. And so, and I, personally, I'm definitely, I was never a conspiracy theorist until the last couple of years. And I've just seen some things that are absolutely crazy, just insane. And the
And it's
fact
not like you
that,
believe the theories or the conspiracies themselves. It's like there's enough there to be able to, like, yeah, I smell bullshit.
yes, yes, but in order, my opinion is that they are dumbing down our students on purpose. It is all part of the plan. We have embraced more and more socialism. That was always the plan. And well, I shouldn't say it was always the plan, but if you read a book called The Venona Files, in the 50s, a guy by the name of Joseph McCarthy came out and said there are 300 Soviet spies working in at this country to take down America from within. And they attacked him, vilified him, made the world. I can remember my mom going, "Oh my." It was a show, Joseph McCarthy. Oh my God, he was such a disgusting man, And this was in the 70s. So then the 90s come around. The Soviet Union falls, and they literally opened their door to everything, to anyone who wanted to see it. So some American researchers went in, started going through the KGB files. What did they find? They found that there were not 300 KGB agents working to undermine American values and industries, et cetera, from within. There were 3,000 of them. FDR's secretary, the secretary, the main editor of the New York Times,
And
Hollywood actors,
they were very open about what they were doing.
they
Ideological
sure do.
subversion.
There was the one leader, and I forget which one it was now, but he said flat out, "We will destroy you from within." And so what they did was they installed people with socialist values, Marxist values, and you already know what the areas are. I don't have to tell you, but I will. Hollywood, the press, education, government. When has someone at CBS News not been on board for a huge tax increase or a huge overpowering new law to just take over things like the Patriot Act, for example? And the thing is, in Hollywood, if you're not a liberal in Hollywood, don't expect to make a living. If you're not a liberal in the press, unless you're working, and not you can't even work for Fox News anymore. His kids took over. Murdoch's kids took over. Now they're huge liberals. You can't work in government if you're an open conservative. I mean, in education, I mean, you're seeing it. And, anyone who's against critical race theory in education, especially universities, forget about it. Forget about it. You will never have a decent career, and
And
they
so that's
may
how they
force
keep us
you.
quiet.
That's exactly how they keep us quiet. They have these very dedicated leftists in very key positions. Like I was getting back to the Air Force and the DODEA. They didn't change anything, even though testified before Congress. Oh yeah, we're going to do that, and then they did not, and they got away with it because they have. It's not the military leaders; it's all of these DoD civilians who are in these same positions for 20 and 30 years, very
Unelected
important
bureaucrats.
positions, unelected bureaucrats, and you're going to find them in the Defense Department, in the Department of Education. You're going to find them in every newsroom. You're going to find them in every movie set, every television set. When people come out as conservative in Hollywood, they know their careers are essentially over, or they're going to have to work for very select. I mean, you can probably count on two hands how many open conservatives are actively working in Hollywood today. Not a lot, you know.
Yeah, not actively working. No, you're right.
And
A great
so
example
and
of that would be um,
yes,
Tim Allen's TV show. I can't remember. I watched it all the
home
time. I'm a big
improvement,
fan.
home improvement. Yes,
And the next one that he did that was pulled from was ABC, and they had to move to a different network. Last Man
yeah,
Standing. That was it. That
yeah,
was a really good show, and it was very family oriented, very funny.
right.
And then ABC pulled it, and
Sure.
they wouldn't explain why, and it was all political. And
Well,
then
we know why. We
yeah,
know why. Look what happened to Roseanne. Look what happened to Roseanne. She came out as very actively conservative, and they removed her from her own show,
yeah,
you know,
and completely
and
changed the
so,
show.
and completely changed the show. And they are, and when you watch these shows and these movies, you get all of these liberal ideas embedded into the movies. And oh, climate change. Oh, anybody who thinks climate change is crazy, they're the crazy ones. But even movies like what was it, I, Robot? It was a great movie. I enjoyed it. I love Isaac Asimov, one of my favorite authors. I used to read a lot of science fiction when I was a teenager, and he was one of my favorites. But at one point in the movie, after they had turned off all of the electric vehicles, okay, why do they want you in electric vehicles? If you're a conspiracy theorist, it's because they're planning on turning them off someday. But at one point, after they had turned off all the electric vehicles, Will Smith happened to have an old combustion motorcycle. And so they couldn't shut that off. So he was escaping on this motorcycle. There was a woman professor or doctor or somebody going with him. And she goes, "What is this, a combustion engine?" And this is not exact. I'm not, not a word for it. Is this a combustion engine? Oh, yeah, it is. They blow up, right? Again, this stuff's not on purpose. This isn't a mistake. This is all on purpose. This
Have
is
you read
very
1984?
purposeful. Yes, you did. And I did. And we all did. And if we haven't, you should have. But you know what? Even if you haven't, you've heard things. You've heard things. And you know what we're talking about here. And you all think, oh, that will never, oh, come on, it'll never get to that point.
Well,
Well,
it only takes like 2 or 3 generations to change stuff. You look at that movie. Oh hell, it's Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes. I can't remember the
yeah,
name.
I
Demolition
know it's,
Man.
yeah,
So you look at that movies like that, and the dystopian future that you see. Oh, that'll never happen. It only takes like 2 generations. And like
yeah,
look, World War II. Everybody's still everybody's forgotten about the power of the nuclear bomb now.
yeah.
And
And
that's only been
everybody's
one
forgotten
generation.
and people have forgotten about the Holocaust.
Yeah.
Now on
Well, now I'm
basically
hearing more and more
all of
people denying that it ever happened.
yeah, there's that, but then you get these kids protesting on these college universities against Jewish people, against Israel, and they're for Palestine. They're supporting terrorists and opposing Israel. And
That
again,
reminds me of
that was
that
just
gays
70
for
years ago.
Palestine.
Yeah, exactly. And if you were gay and over in Palestine, you know what they would do with you? They
They'd
would cut
hang
your
you.
head off or throw you off a roof or whatever. They would kill
You wouldn't
you.
last 10 minutes. If you
No,
take that
because
pride flag in there, you wouldn't last 10 minutes.
not 10 minutes. Sharia law, according to Sharia law. And again, the Islam has a lot in common with Marxism. Marxism wants to install Marxist governments in every nation around the world, eventually leading to a one world government. Islam wants to install Sharia law, the most severe form of Islam, in every nation in the world, eventually having a one world Islamic planet. And they're the same. They're exactly the same. You do what we say or you're done. And they are totalitarian in ways that you and I would never even imagine. But the thing about 1984 that's interesting was in everyone's home there was a camera and a microphone. And when it was quiet, they would kind of go down and not go too much. But if they heard something that was wrong, the camera would come on and someone would, hey, what's going on over there? And oh, come on, that will never happen. And the one thing that we never estimated or guessed at was that we would install these cameras and these microphones ourselves. And we did. I got a ton of them in my house. I'm looking at one right now. I'm speaking
Yeah.
through one right now. And they can turn them on anytime they want to. And you can't tell the difference. That's why a lot of those cameras have that little flap that goes over it and shuts it off. Because if a hacker knows what he's doing, he can turn your camera on and your computer microphone and watch and listen to everything you're doing, and you'd never know it.
Yeah, which is, how many people have security cams inside their house? I know I do. And
I
and
do.
it's like
I do.
that's the first thing I told my wife is like, I hate these cameras on the inside. She's like, "Why?" And I said, "Well, because it doesn't even take a smart person anymore to hack those cameras.
You're very true. Very true. But I
It's
mean, things are coming so quickly. Elon Musk. Now, I think Elon Musk is one of the good guys. But we're just talking about iRobot. Did you see the robot he just rolled out a couple of days ago?
Yeah, it's fantastic looking. It looks just like the iRobot.
And my fiance freaked out. She's like, "Oh my God, we are not having one of those." And I'm
Yeah,
like,
those videos don't even look real, George.
I know, you know what? And that's another thing. It is Are the videos we're looking at real or are they Hollywood CGI computer generated images? And you just don't know what's the truth, what's not the truth. We have no idea.
And
We have no
they did
idea.
that shit on purpose too, I feel like.
I agree with you. I do. I
And
agree with you.
you had mentioned a little while ago the breakup of the nuclear family.
Yeah.
And that is something that is very people don't think about it. People don't think about the nuclear family being what's wrong. That mom and dad not both being in the home and not having that stability and like something as simple as eating together every night.
Yeah.
That can make a huge difference in a kid's life. And we only know it because we just started doing it here. And
Yeah.
it's amazing. It's the
Well,
and I've always wondered this why people say that kids that grow up in two parent households, regardless of how those households are ran, are generally happier when they're older, regardless of the traumas that they have to go through.
yes. Well, research shows, and this is something I covered in my book, research shows without question that two biological parents in a home raise more stable children. Period. End of sentence. Now, They can get divorced. They can bring in a very capable step parent. They can have grandma live here. They can do all these other things. But the simple fact remains all of these other recipes, all of these other scenarios, none of them are as successful as two biological parents. And even a leftist magazine like The Atlantic, and I used it as a resource in my book, had to admit two biological parents are the single best way to raise children, period. Now, why is Marxism against this? For a couple of different reasons. First of all, when children have allegiance to their parents, that is a threat to the state. It was something they did in the Soviet Union. It was something they did in Red China, in Nazi Germany. They always taught the children to report your parents if you see them doing something wrong. So, but the other thing is that Marxists see, I think they see the nuclear family as well as a threat, of course, but as something they won't be able to penetrate, so they have to break it up. But they interpret a woman's role in the home, for example, as being oppressed. A lot of women like to stay home. Maybe they go out and have careers and everything else, but
Oddly
a
enough,
lot
I'm a
of women,
stay-at-home dad, George. I love it.
there you go. And wonderful, perfect, beautiful. But you know what? They see it as oppression, a marriage against women as oppression, because the role of the mom, she doesn't get paid, her work is never done, but they never take into consideration that, you know what? Maybe mom is getting a great deal of satisfaction from being a wife and mother. She enjoys raising her children. She enjoys being a wife. She enjoys all of these things, but they don't see it that way. They teach it as, again, oppression, because what they want to go back to is a matriarchal society where anybody could be the kid's father, but the only person that you can track for sure is mom. And this goes back to Karl Marx. These are Karl Marx's ideas. He thought patriarchal society led to agriculture, led to land ownership, led to oppression, classes, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the one thing that you have to consider about the nuclear family, slavery could not destroy the African American nuclear family, even though they were often broken up on purpose. They were largely intact in many ways. Jim Crow could not break up the African American family. They were more intact than white families in the early part of this century, through the 50s and even into the 60s. More Black children, percentage wise, grew up with their biological parents than white kids. Then the social justice reform hit and welfare hit. And they wrote the laws in ways that discouraged two parents from being together. Now it's something 75 to 80% of all African American babies are born out of wedlock or even committed relationships. That is how dangerous socialist ideas are. And believe me, all of this welfare stuff, getting you dependent on the government is a big part of their plan. That's why they want, universal health care. That's why they want all of these things. Because if you depend on the government for your livelihood, then they can control you. And once they control you, it's over. Over.
Yeah, I, man, that's so. When you think about things in terms of what is happening,
Yeah.
and you think about, is there something nefarious about all this? And I think there used to be, but then you see that we're doing it to ourselves these days. We talked about
Yeah.
ideological subversion. I think it's already happened. I
Oh,
think it's
without a
done.
doubt. Without a doubt. Now, I don't think the average worker at the welfare office sits there and goes, you know what, if I give this person, I give them, I'm going to break up their family. I don't think they think that way. But the planners, the people who are designing this stuff, the people who have been put into these key positions, they do. There's just no other explanation. There's just no other explanation.
Are you religious, George?
I am. I am a Christian. Yes, I believe in Jesus Christ and I believe he is my Lord and Savior.
So I don't know how to say it. I'm what they call a cardboard Christian. That's what I heard in Sunday school one time. I am a
Okay.
um it's a I'm a Christian on Sundays and live a devil through the week kind of life, you know. It's it's odd, but I believe I'm not religious in the aspect that I'm not on track with organized religion, and for the
Neither
same
am I actually.
reason, it's for the same reason I'm not on track with CRT. It's indoctrination, either way you look at it. Um, but there is something about religion and keeping families together. In my opinion, I'm very spiritual. Like I believe in God, I believe
Yeah.
in a creator, but I'm not religious. But there is something about religion that keeps families together. Can you speak a little bit on that?
Well, sure. Well, let me say this one thing first. Um, you may see yourself as Christian on Sunday and, following the devil or however you said it for the rest of the week. But the thing is, when you're a Christian, your sins he does not see your sin. So now that doesn't mean you're free from the consequences of your action. Okay. Which means like, okay, I'm going to go steal a car. All right. Well, God's going to forgive you for that sin,
But you
but
might
he's
have
not
to
going to
do a little
protect you.
time.
He's not going to protect you from going to jail. And you may end up in jail and he's going to, well, that's, yeah, those are consequences of your actions. But as far as organized religion is concerned, here is the Pope. Let's talk about the Pope. Well, first of all, Jesus only got mad at one group of people, the Pharisees, the religious people who were using religion to control the people. Okay, and take advantage of them. Okay, you did this wrong. You need to bring me a spotless goat, and you need to give me 18 shekels. And these are poor. These are poor people. They got nothing. And because you had a dirty thought in your mind. Um, and Jesus got angry at those people, and he didn't get angry. He didn't even get angry at the people who crucified him. Okay, but he got angry at these people because they were using religion to control. But the Pope. Um, are you aware of something called the FBI's pedophile signs, pedophile symbols? Okay, the FBI has investigated child sex abusers, and they found out that they use certain symbols to alert each other of their presence. There is a boy lover symbol, there's a girl lover symbol, they even have code words that they use. But the boy lover symbol is a triangle inside of a triangle, which I guess is supposed to represent a man over being on top of a younger boy. And so it, like that kind of a thing. And I should, I could look on my phone, but I don't want to go there. But um, the Pope has a set of robes that has the boy lover symbol on the collar and around the cuffs. And then, of course, we know all about the sexual abuse that went on with priests once upon a time. When they got caught, they just were moved. Never really faced any true consequences for their actions. Um, yeah, the evidence shows that the Catholic Church has done a lot of bad things in this world, and they still are. But we have a huge problem with pedophiles in this world. There's no doubt about it. The whole P. Diddy thing that's going on right now,
Yeah, I'm
um,
very intrigued by that. I had no
Jeffrey
idea.
Epstein. Yes. Anyway, I won't go into too much detail on that. I think the P. Diddy thing is going to expose a lot of people. Just in Hollywood, the two Coreys, you may have heard about them
Yeah.
and how these movie executives passed them around when they were young children.
And
Um,
they're still being quieted on that. The of course Corey
yeah,
Haim passed away, but the other Corey, his career was ruined. He
yeah,
doesn't like nobody will like I've seen him on podcasts and stuff, but like he doesn't
yeah.
have a career
But
to speak of.
no, he'll never make another movie again because he came out and talked. So, Harvey Wine, I mean, all of these guys, they have been sexually abusing children for a long time. Um, and there were some allegations just today, or was it yesterday? Wentz, vice president nominee. I've seen four different posts from four different sources on X that he had a sexual relationship with a young man while he was a varsity football coach. Um, and you can't tell me that no one knew this about him before they made him their vice presidential nominee.
Yeah.
I
That's
mean, it's crazy.
it
It's
is very
crazy.
crazy. And
And
like it's crazy to the point where they don't hide it anymore. They
nope.
like the Epstein stuff, man. Like everybody knows like who all was involved. Like Trump's name was in that black book. Everybody knows how like there's all these major players and that
Yeah.
there is something seriously wrong, but
Yeah.
we're not talking about it.
Well, the one thing you have to realize about Donald Trump was that he did ride Epstein's airplane one time, but not to the island. His plane was broken. Jeffrey Epstein, who was living in that Palm Beach community, offered him his plane. I'll fly you back to New York on my plane. Please take it. Thank you very much. Not long after that, um, Jeffrey Epstein, not surprisingly, began acting like the creepy little man that he is around his staff, around Trump's Mar-a-Lago staff. And Trump permanently removed him from that. So Trump
Yeah,
was
and I
never
think if there
on,
was any skin on the bone with Trump, they would have already added him by now.
they would have already had it out. Absolutely. First of all, just about 99% of everything you hear about Donald Trump is a complete fabrication or twist of the facts. I heard during the debate, Kamala Harris said, "You still haven't, what was it, disowned white supremacy from that day at Charlottesville."
Yeah, that and
That was
Biden did the
disproven.
same thing. Biden did the same thing during the presidential debate with him and Donald Trump
Okay.
earlier this year.
Okay, then maybe it was Biden. Maybe I'm getting
No,
my
it was
facts a
both
little
of
bit
them.
mixed up.
I watched both.
Okay.
It was both of them.
Okay. But the thing is, if you look at the transcript, at the very next sentence in the transcript, he does say, very fine people. I'm not talking about the white supremacists. I'm just talking about the average citizens over here, basically, to paraphrase what he was saying. 7 years later, they're still saying, well, you haven't disavowed white supremacy. And all of those news stories that came out, all of those reporters they told that story for another 2 or 3 years. And 2 or 3 years, they finally admitted, okay, maybe he did do it. All they had to do was read the next sentence in the transcript that they had the very same day, 3 years earlier. Okay. These are the kinds of lies that the press does every single day. And Joe Biden, well, Joe Biden may not know it, but his people do. And Kamala Harris, they all know that Donald Trump disavowed white supremacy. They all know it, but they're still bringing it up because why? Because people don't pay attention. And people, oh, if it's on the news, it must be true. My mom just passed away in 2023. And I used to tell her, she used to say, "Oh, that Donald Trump." I'm like, "Mom, you need to stop watching the news." Why? Because they're lying to you, Mom. "Oh, they all get together and they all come up with lies to tell me on the news." Yeah, that's exactly what's going on. I mean, have you ever seen they got that one video where they're all talking about how uh I forget what the message was, but it was sent out to all these local stations, and they get like they first it's one, then two, then three, then there's like 50, and they're all saying the exact same thing.
Yeah.
All saying the exact they all got scripts and they all followed them word for word. CBS, NBC, ABC didn't matter. All of these local stations, they all followed it to a T.
And then
So,
with the internet, you get to see a news story in New York. Um, a news story in New York is told a different way here. Like,
yes.
it's it's spun a completely different way in New York, and then the news gets here, and it's like a big game of telephone. But
Mm,
I think it's engineered that way. I think that it's reported to, it's tailored to their audience and
yeah.
how they want them to think.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And your local news. I was at my aunt's house not too long ago, and she watches ABC 7 in New York City. She was watching the news, and I never do, but I was there, so I was watching, and I was being polite. I wasn't saying anything, but it was just one negative story about how this black person was taken advantage of, how this Hispanic person was taken advantage of, how that person was looked down upon because they were a minority. And it was just one story after another. And basically, what they are employing is critical race theory in the news. And so, there was a program called Wit and Wisdom in Tennessee, and a group called Moms for Liberty noticed something unusual about these reading lessons for these kids in kindergarten through sixth grade. And they took it, and there was like just horrible things, one after the other, just bad, 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 bad. And it wasn't all about race. It was about many things, an owlet died. A monkey killed an owlet in one story. And, there was a dragon who smelled the flesh of burning children in another book. And so they went to a psychiatrist, and they said, "What is this?" And he said, "It's the psychology of shame. It is a classic brainwashing technique designed to tear down your belief system, and so that they can install the new one." Again, we go back to Soviet Russia, Red China, Nazi Germany. That's exactly how they do it. They do it to prisoners of war. That's exactly how America is bad. You are bad. You need to accept our values in order to be good. And so and it's happening on the news every day. The psychology of shame. And when adults were going through these books for children, the adults were getting depressed because of the repetitive negative, 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 negative. Now
Yeah,
think of the
you see
impact
it
on your
all over social media. You see it on the
all
news.
over, all over. Now imagine the impact on a 5-year-old child, 6-year-old child, even a 10-year-old child.
I got a funny story. A 5-year-old child in the news. So I watch News Nation, and
Mhm.
for the only reason I chose News Nation really is because I'm a big UFO nut, and they
Mhm.
follow the UFO stuff more than any other news channel. But also because when my television is either tuned to sports or news, my children don't touch it. So it's either on sports or news all the time.
Yeah.
And we were watching so on News Nation, of course, all the news stories. And every once in a while, my 5-year old will pop up breaking news. And so that's kind of funny. But we were at the grocery store. We were at Aldi of all places, and
Mhm.
we were going up and down the aisles, and we saw some cereal, and just making conversation with my 5-year old. I said, "Hey, buddy, you want some cereal? You want to go get some cereal?" He says, Ah, no, inflation, Dad. And that was, he's
Yep.
5. And I was like,
Good for him.
fair enough, man. Fair enough. No
Good
cereal,
for him.
inflation. I got you. And he's right
Oh,
though,
that's
because the
funny.
box of cereal was like $6. So
Yeah.
it was inflated. And I was like, absolutely, I love you, man. And
Yeah.
it's stuff like that. We don't think that they're paying attention, but they are. And that's, I'm not necessarily too worried about my kids in CRT because they have a dad like me who is, I don't even necessarily agree with school. I don't know why you even
Yeah.
have to go. I'm a big, I don't believe in compulsory laws either. I um I'm a very weird kind of guy. I used to, people used to tell me I'm more of a libertarian, but it's more than that. I'm intelligent enough to understand that I want freedom. To me, is to be left alone to my own devices. I
Yeah.
understand why we need to make crap. I understand why we need manufacturing. I understand why we need doctors, teachers, lawyers, all that stuff. I understand it, but I'm not that guy. I'm not your guy. I'm the type of guy. I say things like, the world needs ditch diggers too. That's what I am. I'm a ditch digger. And at this point, I'm a professional dad. I've been a stay-at-home dad for 10 years and I
Good for
love it.
you. Yeah.
Um, my wife is a career woman, and we acknowledged a long time ago, like the she has the ability to make more money than me because she's educated and she has the college degrees and stuff that I don't have.
Hmm.
But it's like I also don't want strangers raising my children. So I don't necessarily worry so much about CRT or DEI affecting my children so much or their education because I believe education first and foremost starts at home.
Mm.
And I am responsible for not only helping my kids learn in school and getting them back and forth to school, making sure they get through their lessons, but I'm also responsible to teach them too. And um, I do support the public school system in that, when my kids go to school and I get a phone call from the school saying that they've been naughty or whatever, I'm like, well, I always am with the school first because I know
Sure.
kids have a tendency to make things look, better than what they really are on themselves. Or I didn't do that. So and so hates me, and this teacher's picking on me. And I'm like, no, I don't. I disagree. I know all the rules, but I just I don't worry about it too much because I'm here for my kids. And what do you give for advice for parents like me who aren't necessarily worried about it? I don't. I don't have an opinion one way or the other. Critical race theory is, the more I learn about it, the less I like it, the less I
Sure.
want it taught in schools. But if we have to have it that way, what do you tell parents like me who do understand CRT and don't want our kids to follow that path? What do you tell us to help us at home to steer our children in the right direction?
Sure. Well, if let's just say, for example, your child has CRT at school and there's nothing you can do about it. In those situations, you definitely want to have very long, very honest discussions with your child. You want to show them why what they're learning is wrong, how it is, just because you're a little white boy doesn't mean that you're prejudiced just by walking in the door, doesn't make you a racist. Um, you know, uh, so you want to explain that to them. But the second thing you might want to do is if you have no choice, just have your child do the exercises that they need to do. Have them write the essays they need to write. Have them write it in a way that the teacher will approve of it. Just get the grade and move on. But as long as they understand the difference because you've taught it to them, they're going to be fine. And I've heard a lot of parents, there was a lot of parents, North Carolina, there was parents complaining about CRT, and they had Mark Robinson, Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, who is a conservative African American. You can only imagine the things the press says about him. They compared his efforts to root out critical race theory out of school to the KKK. Okay, just to give you an idea, the Charlotte Observer. Okay, oh, but they're even-handed, right? They're just the news. But anyway, he created something called a facts task force where parents could write submissions. What's going on? Did you see anything? Tell me about it. And they had something like 500 submissions, and there was many of them that I read through that said things like, my child just does the homework the teacher wants to hear. They've learned not to argue with them. Just write the essay they want to hear, get the grade, and move on. That might be the simplest way to do it. However, if you have an opportunity, again, get together with like minded parents, build a coalition, reach out to organizations. Like I've just gotten involved with an organization called FAIR, Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism. And they are a civil rights organization that protects progressives and conservatives, everyone. And they have resources. They're sort of just getting started, but they do have resources to help you. And if they can't help you, they might be able to connect you with someone who can help you. There are people who are willing to stand up and fight. And so we have out here in California, we have something called the California Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum, mandatory starting next year. The words critical race theory are not in it, but I went through the first 600 pages, and it is wall to wall critical race theory. Mandatory charter, private, and public schools. The only way you can get your children away from it is to have them attend what we call here in California. I live in California, by the way, a private education association, a PEA. It is not a school as recognized by the state of California. They can get away with not teaching it. Everybody else, mandatory. Mandatory for high school graduation, 4 years of English, 3 years of math, 2 years of science, 1 year of their ethnic studies model curriculum.
Wow. Yeah, that's a mandatory. That's wild. So if
Mandatory.
you can get away from it by moving, I suppose, but in your case, well, I'm assuming you like it in California.
You know what? California is a beautiful state. I love the weather here. I have a stepdaughter who is going to be 11 years old, and I have looked at her homework. I have not seen any of these things yet, but we are very seriously considering taking her out of school as soon as she gets to high school and homeschooling her. So we'll have to see how that goes. There are a lot of resources. There's a lot of, you can, if you just go out on Facebook, homeschool near me, you're going to find homeschooling groups near you that will show you where to get a curriculum that doesn't have these things in them. I mean, there's resources everywhere. And allegedly, you're supposed to get some money back if you don't put your kid in school, and then you can use that money to help pay for the curriculums and curricula, and some of the ways to get around all this stuff. There are ways if you're dedicated enough and if you are in a position to do it. And I understand there are some people who just aren't. Two parents working, you can't have them home. You just can't. I get it. I get it. And you have to make a lot of difficult decisions. So, um, but anyway, yeah, do what you have to do to get by. That is my advice. But talk to your kids, make sure they understand.
That's excellent advice, George. So one more thing, and we'll let you get out of here.
Okay.
So I'm almost like a free speech absolutist. And I
Hmm.
say almost because I'm not quite an absolutist. I do understand within reason terroristic threats, can't yell
Sure.
fire in a crowded movie theater, stuff like that. But I'm a firm believer in the only way to combat bad ideas as with good ideas. And your book plays into that a little bit, critical race theory in your school and how to fight back. But I also believe it's very important for people to learn about critical race theory, what it is, how to spot it, not only
Yes.
just how to fight back against it, but really just identifying it. And if you can identify it, you can kind of steer your way around it by using good ideas.
Yes.
I I am that's basically what free speech means to me is okay, if you're going to teach it, I want to know how to teach around it. Is that sort of what you're going for with the book? If we can't get around it, this is what we can do instead.
Sure. Yeah. I would say yes. But I would say fight it first. See if you can fight it first. If you can't, then, just you don't want to surrender, but just take a step back. Again, just do what you do to have to get by. One thing, you're talking about the positive free speech. The state of Florida just released a brand new social studies program in 2023. It is a CRT free social studies program, history. And one of the accusations they make against critical race opponents like myself is you don't want to teach real history. Well, this particular social studies program, and I put a link to this on my Facebook page where I talk about these things occasionally, where they deal with things like slavery in very real language, very honestly, but they do it in an age appropriate manner. Okay. Um, Getting back to that wit and wisdom thing, you're not going to see, illustrations in the book where, you see, public, white children in a pool, the Hispanic children outside the fence, it looks like a jail. And then the sign that says public pool, no Mexicans or dogs allowed, which was in Wit and Wisdom second grade reading, mandatory, required. Um, but what this social studies program does is it teaches the positives. Yes, slavery was real. It was horrible. Here are the conditions that they lived in. But you got to do it in high school. You can't teach that to kindergartners, but you can teach age appropriate slavery to children that young. But again, I mean, you can't just shatter who they are. But the most important thing about that social studies program, it is an ethnic studies program that talks about all of the positive things that they've done, the culture that African Americans have brought to our country, the contributions, the patriots that existed, the African patriots that existed during the Revolutionary War. I mean, the scientists, the great achievers, they're out there, man. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. And CRT does not teach those things, but an ethnic studies course will. And that's the positive that we want to include in all of our children's lessons. And even if your child happens to be white, yeah, they should go through an ethnic studies program about Hispanic children or Hispanic culture, about African American culture, about Asian culture, all of it. It's what we are. It's who we are. We happen to live in one of the most racially tolerant societies in the world, and you would never know it by watching the news.
Amen, George. Thank you very much for being here. And I'm gonna link your Facebook in the description of the show. Where else can people find you? Where can they find your book?
Well, again, my book is titled Critical Race Theory in Your School: How to Fight Back, and it is on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And since I'm not into cute titles, my Facebook page is Critical Race Theory in Your School: How to Fight Back by Dr. George Maurer. And like I said, I've kind of gotten away from it a little bit, but I got to get back into it. I've been concentrating on a couple of other things right now, but I will generally post any new news about CRT. out there, and that way you can kind of keep up to breast on things. You can keep up to date on the latest things. Um, and I just wrote an op-ed for something called the Wrong Speak Publishing, about a young lady who went to school to be a counselor to help herself heal from some of the things that happened in her life. And she was overwhelmed by the DEI in the counseling education program. And since she did not buy into it, they basically flushed her out of the class. And DEI and CRT in counseling degree programs across the country is another huge issue. And it's actually, I'm considering that. I've been thinking, what's my next book going to be about? And I think that may be it, because
Please,
all of these
please,
all of these doctors and these counselors that are coming out, they are social justice warriors. And one of the ladies who commented to my op-ed said, my son was having issues. He went to a counselor to help him, and when he was at his most vulnerable, they convinced him that he was actually a girl in a boy's body, and he takes all of these crazy drugs now and no longer speaks to anyone in his family.
wow.
Scary stuff. Scary stuff.
That
So
stuff happens here too.
yeah.
Fortunately, fortunately, we have. So I think that the child psychologists around where we live have kind of gotten away from that. I was kind of
Good.
worried about that because my son needed some therapy himself. I
Yes.
was kind of worried about that because of the way we live. I don't want him indoctrinated. I don't want him filled with
Of course
crap
not.
ideas.
Yeah.
But the therapists and the psychologists that we saw were very aware of what I call a social contagion, and they agreed with me.
Good.
They saw things my way, and they were like, "No, no, we don't think this is what that is. We think this is just acting out. We can help
Yeah.
you." And sure enough, like it, within a few months, it was, completely different kid. What we did was we took him offline, George. We took all the online stuff away, and that was pretty much, that was my idea, but it was reinforced by the therapists,
Hmm.
and they said, "Good job, Dad." And they saw the change in him almost immediately. We saw the
Yeah.
change in him almost immediately. And so I would like to invite you back on. Um, I want to talk about DEI. And I
Okay.
do know critical race theory and DEI, in my mind, are two separate things, but they do
Okay.
go hand in hand.
I
Um,
think
I
so.
I have an absolute, just like I have a personal story with CRT and the safety issue in school. I have a DEI story. You had mentioned doctors and lawyers, all important people being into the DEI stuff. I got a personal story about that, and I'll share with you next
Okay.
time. But
Okay.
man,
I
I
would love to come
appreciate you
back.
being here. I
Well,
appreciate you being here. This has been a great conversation, man.
I am very glad that you found a good doctor, one that you can trust. Because parents, I mean, again, it's you need to be aware. It's you got to be careful who you expose your children to. And there's lots of good people out there, but you know what? There's also a lot of bad people out there. And the last thing you want is one of those bad folks to get through and influence your children in one of these ways where they turn their backs on you and all these things. So, but I am very happy to hear that your child's counseling session was a positive thing. Very happy to hear it.
Thank you, George. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.